So my kids love story time. In fact, most nights they won't go to bed until I've gone upstairs and told them a story. And their favorite ones aren't actually the ones out of the books, not the Grimm's fairy tales or stories for children or anything like that. Their favorite stories are the ones that their dad, actually makes up. And my son specifically, his favorite stories are the ones that involve usually a Pegasus unicorn horse and then some kind of a monster, a little fuzzy monster that is either trying to steal his Pegasus unicorn horses or sneaking into his room at night and stealing all his toys from him. Now, I learned as my son got older, I actually had to be kind of careful about what stories I told because he would get so into these stories, he'd forget that they were just made up. He'd forget that we were just creating this out of nothing. They would become reality for him. And if I told a story that was too intense or too scary or he bought into it too much, then we'd have to spend a lot of time kind of unwinding that story so he could go to bed. Now, the cool thing about us as adults is that we still have our love of stories. The downside is we forgot that we're telling them to ourselves all the time. So we still tell stories, except now in our minds, they're reality. And when I work with salespeople, when I'm coaching, a lot of the stories I hear stories, especially if we're in a position where you can't set your own pricing, for instance, like when I was back in insurance, or when I'm working with agents, I hear lots of stories around how upper management is changing rates or changing how much the product costs. And that's going to drive the agent out of business. It's costing too much, right? This evil manager, this evil CEO that's screwing with my business and is going to run me out. Okay, that's one story. The story I prefer to tell in that situation is how exciting it is that I have no control over my pricing, and yet somebody's going to go ahead and give me a raise by raising the cost of my product, my service that I sell, right? Because if I'm in commission-based sales, or if I'm just in business and I'm charging more for something, that means I'm usually making more money on the back end. So I have a story about how excited I am that I'm not going to have to deal with as many customers because I'm making more money off each customer. I have a story about how excited I am to be able to really just focus on that core group of customers that I want to retain and really show up and do well for them. And I'm even more excited about the fact that I'm going to be making more money, right? Because if I have to charge more, or if I'm charging more for my product or service, and I'm continuing to grow my business, which will happen as a side effect of me showing up and serving those customers more powerfully, then I end up ahead of the game. Two stories to choose from. One of them serves me personally, spiritually, and financially. The other one drains me emotionally, and also is going to end up draining my bank account there, as my focus, my energy will be put towards being angry and upset and worried rather than making money. Okay, so in business, we always have two sides. No matter what happens, there's two sides to it. One side is positive, helps me grow as a person, helps my business grow. The other side is fear-based, makes me want to shrink, and ends up hurting me in the long run. Just like my kids, we make these stories up, and we can choose which one to believe.